Whitewater canoeing is the sport of paddling a canoe on a moving body of water, typically a whitewater river. Whitewater canoeing can range from simple, carefree, gently moving water, to demanding, dangerous whitewater. River rapids are graded like ski runs according to the difficulty, danger or severity of the rapid. Whitewater grades range from R1 to R6. Grade Class 1 can be described as slightly moving water with ripples. Grade Class 6 can be described as severe or almost unrunnable whitewater, such as Niagara Falls. Design: the canoe used in casual whitewater canoeing is different from those used in whitewater racing. Traditionally, canoes were made of tree bark, sewn with tree roots and sealed with resin. Early whitewater boats were made of wood, followed by aluminum and later fiberglass or Kevlar, followed by more exotic composite materials including Spectra, Vectran and carbon fiber. The various composite materials are still preferred for racing due to the lightweight, but most modern recreational whitewater boats are typically roto-molded from a tough plastic or molded from a plastic laminate called Royalix, which is an ABS plastic that is slightly flexible and very durable, if easily scratched, but repairable using either plastic welding or a variety of patch bonding techniques. Boats can range in size from barely long enough to hold the paddler long, up to 12 feet or longer for solo boats, and typically 14 to 16 feet for tandem boats. History: paddling on rivers, lakes and oceans is as old as the Stone Age. The raft, the catamaran, the canoe and the kayak evolved depending on the needs and environment of the indigenous peoples in different parts of the world. The modern-day canoe most likely originated about 8,000 years ago. The Greek Herodotus 484–425 BC wrote in his travel diaries about boats with which merchandise was brought from Armenia to Babylon. The boats were made of a wooden framework that was covered with animal skins. Mules hauled the precious skins back to Armenia. The Scot John MacGregor published in 1866 the book 8,000 Miles in the Roy Rob Canoe. The timing was right and the book became a resounding success, with the Industrial Revolution leading to more leisure time in the middle of the 19th century. People in Europe started to enjoy floating down rivers in all kinds of contraptions, taking in nature previously only available to a selected few types. There are several subcategories in whitewater canoeing. River running. River running can be thought of as a tour down a river to enjoy the scenery as well as experiencing challenging whitewater. River running includes short day trips as well as longer multi-day trips. Multi-day canoe trips often entail the use of gear-toting rafts to allow a more comfortable experience without a heavily laden canoe, although many people also carry their own gear in their canoes, especially on remote Canadian rivers. Canoes with gear typically are limited to Class 3 whitewater. Sometimes open touring canoes with gear used on multi-day trips are fitted with fabric spray covers. Whitewater racing is the competitive aspect of this subcategory, racing canoes down a river as fast as possible. Creeking. Creeking is perhaps best thought of as a subcategory of river running, involving very technical and difficult rapids, typically in the grade Class 4 to V range. While people will differ on the definition, creeking generally involves higher gradient, approaching or in excess of 100 feet per mi, and is likely to include running ledges, slides, and waterfalls on relatively small and tight rivers, though some will allow for very large and big volume rivers in the definition. Canoes used for creeking usually have higher volume and more rounded bow and stern. as these features provide an extra margin of safety against the likelihood of pinning, and will resurface more quickly and controllably when coming off larger drops. Creek boats usually have increased rocker or rise on the boat to go up and over obstacles and obstructions within the river. Extreme racing is a competitive form of this aspect of whitewater canoeing, in which canoes race down steep sections and generally dangerous sections of whitewater. Slalom is a technical competitive form of canoeing and the only whitewater event to appear in the Olympic Games. Racers attempt to make the way from the top to the bottom of a designated section of river as fast as possible, while correctly negotiating gates. There are usually 18 to 25 gates in a race which must be navigated in sequential order. Green gates must be negotiated in a downstream direction, red gates in an upstream direction. The events are typically conducted on grade, Class 2 to grade, Class 4 water, but the placement of the gates, and precision necessary to paddle them fast and clean, makes the moves much harder than the water's difficulty suggests. Pro-level slalom competitions have specific length for kayaks, new rules, width and weight requirements for the boats, which will be made out of Kevlar, fiberglass, carbon fiber composites to be lightweight and have fast hull speed. Plastic whitewater canoes can be used in citizen-level races. In the United States and Canada there are separate slalom organizations and races for decked canoes and open canoes. Playboating, also known as freestyle rodeo, is a more gymnastic and artistic kind of canoeing, while the other varieties of canoeing generally involve going from point A to point B. Playboaters often stay in one spot in the river where they work with and against the dynamic forces of the river to perform a variety of maneuvers. These can include surfing, spinning, and various vertical moves, spinning the boat on all possible axes of rotation. More recently, aerial moves have become accessible, where paddlers perform tricks having gained air from using the speed and bounce of the wave. Canoes used for playboating generally have relatively low volume in the bow and stern, allowing the paddler to submerge the ends of the canoe with relative ease. Competitions for playboating of freestyle are sometimes called whitewater rodeo in the US, but more frequently just referred to as freestyle events in UK and Europe. Techniques. Boofing. Boofing in whitewater canoeing refers to the raising of the canoe's bow during freefall while descending a ledge, ducking behind a boulder, or running a waterfall. This technique is used to avoid submerging the bow of the canoe by ensuring it lands flat when it hits the base of the waterfall. The term is an onomatopoeia which mimics the sound that is usually created when the hull of the canoe makes contact with water at the base of the waterfall. Another type of boof is the rock boof, which is a move that uses a glancing impact with a boulder at the top of a ledge to bounce the boat over a downstream feature, often finished with a mid-air eddy turn. Rock boofs result in sounds both at the top of the drop and the bottom. Bracing, another technique used to prevent the bow of the canoe from submerging. The bowsman uses his paddle like an outrigger held horizontal to the river's surface, used mostly to limit the amount of water the canoe takes in during running rapids. Lining. Some rapids and rock gardens are navigatable when no one is in the canoe. A line is attached to the canoe. It must be center line to the canoe's axis, and the canoe, on shore, simply allows the canoe to run the rapids empty while reeling in or reeling out rope as necessary. Carry. Sometimes the only way to get over an obstacle, like a beaver dam or a shallow rock ledge, is to get out of the canoe and lift it to drag it over. One man to keep the bow as high as possible. Sometimes no weight in the front, no bowsman, works well.